Jeez, Bobby. Buzzkill.
We didn't start,
Way to ruin the mood. No, we're in.
We're
Are
it's
we?
videoing and everything.
Yeah. Jeff, how you doing?
So good, Travis. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Hi, Bobby.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
Jeff, you were gone last week and we missed you. You feeling better?
I'm so sorry.
That's going around, man, that thing.
Dude, this cold was gnarly.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, so today we're talking about 3 things to avoid in escrow, which there are more than 3 things.
There are plenty. We had a list going.
We did.
We might hit on all of them, who knows.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about 3 things to avoid in escrow from an agent's perspective, from a seller's perspective, and from a buyer's perspective. So try to keep it well-rounded. So Bobby,
Yes.
let's start with you.
Okay.
Agents.
Agents.
What advice do you have as the team lead at Keller Williams?
I hear plenty
You
of
do.
them. I really do. I think as agents, a lot of us get into this business because we love people and we love telling people what they want to hear. It just comes with the industry. So avoiding telling people what they want to hear and being realistic with expectations will save you through the process. Having those hard conversations, talking about timelines and what could possibly change, what could come up, and really, giving people an accurate picture of what they're about to walk through. Even if it doesn't feel good as an agent to have to call someone and say, after looking at a home inspection report or whatever it is, to have to deliver that news. So prepping them ahead of time, giving them the tools they have to know kind of what's coming. And it will save the relationship for sure.
So we're talking about escrow, but even before, as you're just talking to leads, it's tough because as agents, this is how we make our livelihood, and you don't want to lose it. And so
Right.
how do you balance that when you're talking to even a lead at the very beginning as an agent?
I think that's the gift of just being honest, though, because we are all very well intentioned. Well,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say we are all. The people that we have the benefit of working with are very well intentioned, and leading with your intentions. And my intention is to work so hard for you and to get you everything you want. Also, what could happen along the way? You know what I mean? It doesn't break the relationship by sharing what could possibly happen. It only benefits them.
Well, and if it's not going to work out for whatever reason, it's always better to know early than later, when both of you have invested more time and energy and all that.
Right.
So it's like, hey, just be honest. Here's what we know of the process. And if you don't like what we tell you, versus even CMAs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes sellers have an idea of what they want to get, and the agent has an opportunity then to say yeah, totally. Or here's why that might not make sense.
So much of the time, I don't think that this is an issue of an agent lying because they want to say what's right. I think it's a lack of experience a lot of times.
Yeah.
So having a team, having a group that you can walk into the office and talk about these things is huge, because you don't know what you don't know. And while you might be very well intentioned, you really need to know what you're speaking
I
on.
just remembered something like my first transaction, and it was totally this. It was like not knowing what you don't know and not communicating it. And I remember I negotiated a request for repairs and got it accepted. And then my client was like, okay, let's do another one. And I was like, wait, we only do one of these. And he's like, no, I want more. I want these things too. And I'm like, I don't know how come I didn't communicate that. But from that then on, I'm always like, this is our one opportunity.
This is your shot.
This is your shot. Just instead of saying here's our opportunity, it's like, this is the one chance we have.
Those are those things, though. That's such earned experience.
Right.
That's so cool that now, when you have new people come on the team, you can share that. And that's what I love about our group that we work with, is we've all earned some badges in this industry, where it's like, I never want to watch someone make those mistakes that I've already made. So
Yeah. So Bobby, when you're in escrow then as an agent, what are some specific things that agents need to clarify and set expectations on once escrow's opened?
Once escrow's open, one thing I really like to set expectations on is communication, to preserve our own lives while we are in escrow, to say, hey, you can count on hearing from me every Friday at 4:00. I will give you an update. I will, keep you front of mind, but until then, that's when I'll bring you all the information. Also, if you're going to be doing a lot of open houses and things like that, letting them know you will give them all the feedback, on Monday afternoon when you've had a chance to, make notes and whatever it is. Otherwise, it goes both ways. Then they're coming at us the whole time and wanting all the information also. I'm trying to think what else.
That's true. I think just clarifying the process and what's going to happen each stage, talking about, contingency periods, things like that. That goes a long way.
Yeah, there's so many
you were
pieces.
talking about from a buyer's perspective, the request for repairs, but I think from a seller's perspective, it's like you enter you get into contract at a certain price, and then maybe letting the sellers know, hey, there is likely going to be some negotiation down the road. So, having that conversation about this might not be where we land price wise, right? And setting the expectation.
That's your job, is to tell them every possible outcome. It's not to direct, but it's to tell them every possible outcome of what could happen so that they can make the best decision for themselves.
And one of the things we tell buyers and sellers is that this isn't about winners and losers. Like, that's not the approach you want to have, because that creates some bad blood. But we want it to be like a win-win, but it's not about like, well, who can
one up
or gouge the other person the most. Like, that's usually not a recipe for success. So
no, we've all worked with some of those.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so agents, set expectations.
Yes.
Not setting expectations is something to avoid.
There you go.
In escrow
we were
or
doing
before.
what to avoid.
Avoid in escrow.
Senor Guapo, how about from a seller's perspective? What's something to avoid?
Yeah, I think there's so many things to avoid in escrow, and in the escrow process, we're not talking about like setting the price and things like that on the home, but in the escrow process specifically, I've seen sellers really try to like hide or not want to address, let's say, issues with the home. And so it's like they know about issues, and they're kind of like, hey, Jeff, there's this thing I'd rather not talk about or whatever. And you're like, oh, we definitely want to talk about that. We want to focus a lot on that.
Especially now that you've told me.
Yeah.
And to save you a lot of pain in the future. So let's just say, for example, there's a seller and they have some kind of like mold, and it's in the walls, and they've been trying to deal with it, and it's maybe kind of taken care of, but kind of not. And they go and they're like, okay, I'm gonna sell my house so I don't have to deal with this anymore and just get it off my hands. Well, the truth is, when you go to sell a house like this, and if you don't disclose that, and the buyers move in and figure that out within the next 4 years, like, they're going to be coming back after you because you didn't disclose it.
Yeah.
Right. And it could be any issue. So what I like to recommend is like, hey, why don't we, if the house is relatively new, we don't necessarily have to do a home inspection, but if it's older house, there's going to be a lot of things that we might want to look at repairing before we go on the market. It could save you a lot of money. So spending a little bit of money up front for especially older houses or houses that might have some more issues to do the home inspection report or things of that nature is super wise. And then just being really honest, like, hey, like, if we address this mold issue again, like, it might be a pain in the butt. It might cost you $10,000 or $15,000, but it makes your house a lot more sellable. And that might cost you, honestly, to sell a house that has a quote unquote mold issue might cost you $50,000. Who knows? Maybe $100,000 discount to get this thing to move, because there's a lot of unknowns. So spending the money up front to address it, and then taking the time to go and like actually fix that issue, could be huge.
Okay, so let's unpack that, because there's multiple layers there. There's like legal layer, which is failure to disclose could get you sued down the road. So that's something you want to avoid, and just disclose everything you know. Then there was the home and pest inspection reports and getting all that done ahead of time. So usually we should clarify, the buyers will do that when escrow is opened. They have a 17-ish day inspection period where they have access to the property and can do all those. You're suggesting like having sellers do that before you even list the property.
Definitely.
To identify some potential issues and maybe take care of them, or at least present them to the buyer. But what if aren't you just giving a buyer a list of problems?
Yeah, that's a great point. So yes, you are giving them the list of problems right up front. And when you list a home at an appropriate price that's going to sell, you're going to have multiple buyers looking at that home. And then at that point, when you have, let's say there's 4 buyers looking at the house, and you're communicating to the buyer's agents, you're saying, hey, look, also I want to make sure you guys look at the supplementals. You looked at the home inspection reports and the termite report, and that you guys write your offer based off that. And if you guys do want to do a request for repairs, which we're okay with, a lot of times I'll say, I want the request for repairs based off of those home inspection reports as you present the offer, so we know what we're dealing with. So my seller is in transparent and with what you guys are really asking for and what your guys are offering for the property. And then all the buyers that write, maybe some decide not to write, maybe some do. Let's say there's 3 that decide to write. They all write it, and they might have the rest of repairs. One might say, hey, we're okay with everything that's on that report. We still want to reserve our right to do inspections. Or maybe they're so comfortable with the property, they say, hey, we are removing our physical inspection contingency. That's up to them. But then you know what you're getting right up front. Now, let's say they go and have another home inspector. That's why we like to use certain home inspectors that are very thorough. But they have another one and they find some additional issues, the buyers do. Well, then they might ask for some of those additional issues to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. But at least you eliminated all the ones that were known, or as many as you could have done with that were made known by that home inspection.
Yeah, so a home inspection and a pest inspection will cost you $600 to $800, somewhere in there. Yeah. So, it sounds like it probably won't hurt you in the long run as a seller to do that. And it might actually help you, because imagine you have a list of things that a home inspector finds, and it actually costs $5,000 to fix if you were the seller and you have that cash to fix it. But as a buyer, there's a perceived cost of that so when the buyer's going to do a request for repairs, maybe the perceived cost of fixing that is like $10,000, and they put that in the request for repairs, and then you have a decision to make as a seller. Do I want to get out of contract and like start this whole process over again? And so now the buyer has the leverage instead of you, because you took care of it or whatever. So
well, let's tie that into the escrow process, right?
Yeah.
So the escrow process is a window of time. You have the start of escrow and you have the close of escrow. And in that time frame, if you have to do, like, let's say it takes a week and a half, 2 weeks for them to do their home inspection. Yeah. And now you have, it's a 45-day escrow or 30-day. Now you're like, okay, we're 2 weeks in, and now I have to get all these repairs done. That's going to be a premium to get those repairs done versus like, hey, we can push back the listing date 2 months, take your time, find the right people, get this work done. It's not going to be a premium price for you.
Right.
It's also when emotions are already involved. Once you're in escrow, there could be feelings already about the people who are buying the home, whatever it is. So it's so much cleaner to do it up front. I really, always.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Good. Okay,
dude, your turn. Buyers.
Okay, so for the one that I was thinking through is buyers should avoid tripping over dollars to pick up dimes. Yeah. And so what we mean by that is we'll give a practical example. Often when you enter escrow, let's talk about like prior to escrow. Yeah. You write an offer, and you could be, and then they counter maybe. Right. And let's say that the counter's let's say it's $1 million home, the counter's like $10,000, And so I've seen it happen where the buyers are not in contract yet, and they're negotiating over $5,000 or $10,000 to land on a purchase price, and then some other buyer comes in and swoops in and writes a better offer, and they lose the house. Ouch. It stings. It happens all the time. And so usually, now if $10,000 or $5,000 is make it or break it, then fine. You shouldn't buy a house that you can't afford, right? It needs to be in a window that's appropriate for you. But if you can afford it, it's like one strategy is to say, just get into contract, because once you're in contract, then you can negotiate on the back end through the things we were discussing, like a request for repairs and all that. Or maybe it's just like, in the grand scheme of things, like, is this the house you want? Then like buy the house at a price that is appropriate and comp support it and all that stuff. But haggling over $10,000 or whatever can actually make you lose the house that you wanted. And so it's like keeping a big picture as a buyer on like, what is it you actually want, and try not to get into the weeds, and also working with an experienced agent who knows when and how to negotiate. So that's a huge one.
Yeah, the when to negotiate. It's like, hey, let's just get this locked up here. If the counter is $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 even sometimes. Yeah. It's like, that's a very small percentage of this transaction. Let's lock it up.
Well, and from a buyer's perspective, it's like, and that's an experienced agent will help navigate that. So it's like, it could be, all right, it's your decision, buyer, but like, maybe we get into contract at this price, right? And we know that we're going to find X, Y, and Z. And if we can negotiate on the back end through requests for repairs and stuff, all of a sudden, the leverage kind of switches more to the buyer, because you're in contract, you have the reports, and then you can, because in the beginning, it's like there might not be any incentive for a seller to accept a lower offer, especially when it's like new on the market and all this kind of stuff. So there's like, no, we're going to wait and get a better offer potentially.
Yeah, they've been dating for a while. It's harder to break up.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's also important to have a good lender who's helping with this conversation.
Yeah.
How much does that
Yes.
actually
Great
cost
point.
you every month?
Oh my gosh, good, Bobby. Yeah.
$10,000 sounds, I mean, especially to a first-time home buyer, it's like $10,000 sounds like a lot. We could go to Hawaii for $10,000.
Yeah.
You know, you're thinking of all the things you're missing because of that. But realistically, what is that every month, you know, in your payment? It's
not
pennies.
much.
Yeah, not significant usually. So that's great.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's probably a lot of other. Do you guys have any other things that come to mind from like agent, buyer, or seller, like things that to avoid doing?
Yeah.
The buyer one, I know we say it all the time and you hear it all the time, but I have realized how important it is to keep reminding them. Do not go out and buy a bunch of furniture for your new house.
yeah,
Do
that's
not go get a new
Oh,
vehicle.
yeah.
Even when you think you're in the clear, do not do anything until you are in that home.
Why is that the case?
Well, it affects your credit. I mean, right down to the very last second, they can.
Yeah, debt to income ratios and credit. Yeah. Yeah, it could mess you up.
Dang.
Yeah.
All right. Jeff?
I think it goes like, you know, the request for repairs could be for buyers and sellers. It's like the value that someone might think of, like, let's say I'm the buyer and I'm like, I really want this cracked window to be fixed. And that's like a big deal for me. And the seller's like, are you kidding me? That window's been cracked for 20 years. I've lived with it. It's fine. No one cares about the cracked or fogged or whatever window. Don't get caught up on whether it's a big deal or not. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Especially for like, it's like, hey, the buyer needs this done, whatever. Just kind of both of you be flexible, negotiate. It's okay. Like, it doesn't matter what the item is. Like, I just see people get caught up on the what. It's like, hey, this one, the buyer just wants to feel like they're getting something fixed, or they're getting some kind of, they're having a little win here. You just got $1.2 million for your house. Like, let's fix the window. Don't get caught up on that. And same with the buyers. Like, hey, if they say no, it's like, hey, let's work on something else. Like, let's ask for something else or work for credit for some other things, whatever. And matter of fact, usually when I write request for repairs, I coach them and say, hey, look, what's the value of the things that you're trying to get, right? And then I don't outline a particular item. I always just do a request for a credit. It's like a buyer's credit. Because it's cleaner, it's easier.
Better with your time frame,
It's
too.
less stressful to the seller because they don't have people coming to their house if they're trying to move. Yeah, it's just, and it's done the way you want it to be done.
Yeah.
So that's how we typically do it, or how I do it.
Another thing that comes to mind to avoid is being unrealistic, for both from a buyer's and a seller's perspective. And it's tough because, you know, buyers and sellers, they buy or sell homes, you know, a few times in their lives, you know, and we do it all the time. And so I guess a pushback from a buyer or seller would be like, well, how do we know what is realistic? And I think that's where you lean on your agent, an experienced agent who can tell you, like, this is what we typically see. Like, we've done hundreds of these. So for example, buyers always want to get a deal. And I understand that. We all do. But when you look at the data, it's like the average ratio from list price to what it's sold for is like 98, 90%, 99%. So most homes sell for really close to list. It's rare that you get like a screaming deal. So I think and that's where we do these buyer consults really early on to like set those expectations and know that if you see a home, we're going to do comps and all that kind of stuff. We'll do our due diligence, but just know that like you're probably not going to get $1 million home for $800,000.
Right.
Like, it's just usually not the case.
Yeah. Unless there's a big giant crack right down the middle of it.
Yes. The Jeff Landon special.
Yeah.
Jeff buys
There you
those
go.
up and
Yeah, right.
yeah, I love them.
Stay away. Stay away.
Uglier the better.
Yeah.
Anything else, you guys?
That was a good podcast. For me, I'm good.
I hope it's helpful. So we talked about agents. What to avoid as an agent in escrow is avoid not being like clear and setting expectations. So we flip
Double
that.
negative.
Yeah,
Double negative.
Yeah.
Avoid not being.
Avoid. How did we do that? I don't know. I guess I didn't follow directions well. I just
no,
came in with what to do.
That's right.
That
That's
sounds
good.
about right.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you what not to do. I'm going to tell you what
everybody
to do.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Be clear, set expectations.
Be clear. Yeah.
From a seller's perspective, Jeff, recap.
Just taking the time up front, identifying issues with the house, disclosing them,
inspections,
either fixing them or disclosing them.
Yeah. And from a buyer's perspective, keep your eye on the prize.
Yeah.
Don't trip over dollars to pick up dimes.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, you guys. You're
Thank
incredible. Another one in the books.
Another one in the books. Thanks.
See you guys.